Okay, let's get to know the loops a bit better and try to be more comfortable using them with an exercise. And as I have said, loops are great for running things over and over. And when you think about it in an artistic use of loops, they're just very perfect for creating patterns. So in this example, let's try to make a few patterns. Um, for the sake of clarity, I'm just going to use this for loop in here. So let me just move this in here. Get rid of this second act. Get rid of this. Yep. Okay. So we already have one row of some form of pattern with concentric circles. And we can also, since we have one row, we can also try to do the same by having a column of it. So maybe I use a while loop for now. And while I want my y to be going from 20 to as much as the height goes. So while y is less than height, I'm going to be drawing these things at the location. So I will just be having one row of it. And then once each iteration is completed, I will increase my y by 40. So let's run this. Great. So now, instead of drawing everything in here, I can just bring my for loop right inside, creating this thing called a nested loop. So nested loop happens when a loop has another loop inside it. And if we run it right now, that's where we are getting pattern. And it looks quite cool, but we can definitely do a bit more with it. So let's see what we can start editing out. So if you see, like, we already have the background color of that gray peeking from here. And if we want that to actually like fit into our screen better, we can maybe start by editing out our conditions. So okay, maybe let me tidy up my code a bit in here. Tab, 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 tab. Perfect. So instead of like maybe starting from height, what about I start from height plus 40? So it goes a bit more down. And then my y, it maybe starts from something like minus 40. Nice. So I think, and I can definitely do the same when it comes to x. So let's just set our x to minus 40. And the condition is also width plus 40. And I'm choosing 40 because that is the size of the each larger cyan ellipse that's getting drawn. Yeah. And then one more thing that I can also like try to experiment with is the way I increase these values. So if I increase them a bit smaller, they're going to get more clumped up together, which creates this like almost chaotic scaly pattern. And this is quite nice, but what if I really want to achieve a sort of fish scale pattern? So as you can see, when we have like fish scales, they're also like concentric semicircles, but there's a bit of a slight translation. Our it seems that, like in our pattern in here, all of the columns, they're in the same line, but in a fish scale, you have one column and the next column is slightly slid to the right or left. And that's what's allowing these patterns to be created. And so what we can do is basically we can edit out X regarding where the Y is at. So we can like have one column starting from here and maybe the other column starting from here. And it goes back and forth. For these certain cases, there is this mathematical operation called modulus, which is going to be so helpful for us. So what modulus does is when you divide a number by a different number, it checks the remainder. If we divide, for instance, like 5 by 2, the answer is 2, and we have a remainder of 1. And in this case, then like 5 modulus, which is declared by the percentage sign, 2 equals to 1. And what we can use is by checking the y, if it's like an odd row or an even row, we can see how we can translate the columns back and forth. So for that, I'm going to create a new variable called row count, and I'm going to start counting by 0. And within each iteration of while, I'm also going to increase my row by 1. Maybe let me just do like to show what's going to be happening now. So, okay, let's stop this. It's just like as the draw function gets run, all of the rows get displayed. And in this case, I have 36 rows. And as you can see, some of the rows are odd numbers, some of the rows are even numbers. I can see which rows are even numbers and which rows are odd numbers by using the modulus math operation that I just talked about. So if I go row mod 2, the result is either going to be 0 if it's an even number, and it's going to be 1 if it's an odd number. And then regarding this condition's outcome, I can edit out my code. So maybe what I can do is if my row mod 2, if it is an even row, I do check it by if this answer is 0 or 1. Okay, so let's just do this just to be safe. I'm going to set my X a bit. I'm going to get my X start a bit less from here. So we will just pick up this X from here. X either starts from -40 or it starts from -20. Now, if I run this, I'm getting the whole scaly thing. So just let me go through this operation and remind you why this modulus is useful. So I have declared a new variable called row. And if that row number, which increases by each row as it gets drawn, if that row number is it's an even number, then I start my X from the position of here. But if it's an odd number, I start my X a bit to the right. And that's what's causing it to get translated. And I can also edit out these values by just making them a bit tighter and just giving like a different scaly pattern. I guess this is the end of this example. I would definitely encourage you guys to play around with these for loops, while loops, try to iterate depending on certain conditions, add more shapes. Let me also maybe show you a few examples of what else you can do with it. Okay, so you can play around with these modulus functions. Like instead of editing out each row, you can edit out each columns and try to create different patterns and different shapes. And you can also definitely try to draw different shapes and edit out the conditions, like in this example, where I am iterating regarding where the mouse position is at, so the pattern is growing in a different location depending on the where mouse is. And I also edit out the colors, so it gives like a completely interesting pattern, giving it a bit more user interaction and visual striking. So this is an example for you guys to follow through and make it better yourself.